Fight or flight is the question at hand in the latest episode of Shogun. My thoughts and reactions right after the jump. Hello, everyone. Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did It. If you haven't already, go ahead, like, share, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, ring that bell below. Anytime we have something, you'll be among the first to know. A little late again this week. Still dealing with some weird sinus infection, but like Toranaga, who is ill in this episode, we're going to fight through and figure out what's on the other side. This eighth episode of Shogun is called The Abyss of Life, and it is a lot of reflection that occurs in this episode. This episode is sort of the calm before the storm. Toranaga has to figure out if he is still going to fight or if he is kind of just succumbing to his inevitable fate of death. We begin in this episode where Nagakato, his son, has died. So while he is still in the procession to go to Osaka, he has a bit of a mourning period. He has a 49-day mourning period because of his kid's death that he gets to sort of, before going to his sentencing, he gets to have, which is probably even worse. You get to live in the fact that your son is dead and then go die. It's a bad back-to-back combo, but that's where he's at. So they are at Edo, kind of having this calm before they get to procession off to Osaka. Toranaga is ill. He's in a bad way. It isn't clear if the sickness is both something he actually caught or if he is so weakened because of the loss of his son that he is now just feeling physically ill. It could be a matter of both. It also could be a little bit of hang, wink, wink, wink. I'm not quite ill, but I'm pretending to be so that people think I'm at my weakest. Via Mariko, Toranaga gives Blackthorn back his belongings and lets them know that, hey, we are all going to surrender, but you have already broken your allegiance from me, so you don't have to surrender. You can go do whatever it is you need to go do. Go find your men, go find your ships. They're here in Edo, but you don't have to follow along with us. And that Blackthorn is like, well, real quick, what are you going to do, Mariko? Like, what are you going to do? She's like, well, this is my allegiance to my lord. Like, this is the way that I have to do. This is what I'm going to have to do. He still doesn't quite understand the ways of what everything is happening. He's like, look, all hope is lost. You can just run. Like, you don't have to go. Why are you all just like going like lemmings to this death? You don't have to do that. Let's run. We can go do something else. But she's like, nope, this is what my duty is. This is what I have to do. My agency doesn't allow me to do anything else than to follow whatever Toranaga is doing. Back in Osaka, we see that Lord Ashido kind of makes a pass at Lady Ochiba. He's like, look, real quick. We both know that your lord wasn't about anything. He wasn't shit. And so how about we strengthen our political bond? How about we do our thing together and you and I make this a thing? And he's like, I know you feel it. And she's like, I don't know. I don't feel anything from you. So she kind of leaves him cold while he pushes up on her, but he just lets her know that the offer is on the table. Whatever you want to do, we can make this thing a thing. There is a late night sort of almost a repast, if you will, for those who don't know, like a celebration of life after death. In the late hours without Toranaga, but with all of Nagakato's friends and the rest of the senior staff of Toranaga's team. And they're kind of just celebrating Nagakato. And they're talking about his courage and bravery to go after his uncle, also his recklessness that he did so. But Omi says, hey, look, even in his recklessness, even in all of that, he was willing to go against his father and show enough bravery instead of just succumbing to whatever it is that the fate has. He was wanting to fight. And that's something that he can say is more than what his father is doing right now, which is just, why isn't Toranaga fighting back? There's a funeral that occurs in Edo where Toranaga does not show up. He is watching from afar. From far tower, he's watching from afar. But he's not there. People notice it. But Yabu also questions and kind of agrees with his nephew as to why aren't we fighting back? We have the kind of cannons and the guns, and we haven't turned them in yet. So why aren't we fighting back? You can see that some of the warriors here in Edo are still wearing their warrior garb. Like, they are still ready for a fight. They haven't completely given up hope yet either. And so he's kind of getting his wheels turning. It's like, why can't we move this thing? He's wondering, there's still some fight left in us. Why don't we do this? That's a part of Tornaga's plan. Because he is still who he is, and Yabu's still going to do what he is. That's also the same case with Blackthorn. We'll get there later. I think in one of my favorite sort of sequences in this episode is the realization of Buntaro and how damaged and fractured his relationship with Mariko is. But he has a moment where Mariko was talking to Lady Jin, and he comes in and he wants to just say, hey, look, I want to make an attempt to repair our relationship. Can I make you some tea later? Can we have a conversation over some tea? And she's like, I would like that. Mind you, all of these folks know that they are on their way to their last few days. So she's like, well, whatever we got to say, let's go ahead and fix this. Let's go ahead and at least have a conversation about it. What's crazy in that sequence is that he approached that scene as almost like a young boy. Remember when you guys were at school, or boys, girls maybe not as much, but girls might have some of this too. When we were younger, you tried to tell somebody else, hey, would you like to go to prom with me? Would you like to go on a date with me? He was reminisced a young kid saying, hey, would you like to go on a like coffee date with me? That would be cool. And that's how young and just bright-eyed and fearful of rejection that he is in that moment. Rico's like, yeah, cool, we can go ahead and do that. The priest comes to visit Toranaga, and the priest lets him know that Kiyama and Ono are not going toward Toranaga. They're not swaying. And Toranaga's like, you're telling me things that I've already know. Like, none of this is news. I got this. But I appreciate you coming to tell me this. But I have allies who've already given me the heads up on this. He also says in the real ways, like, look, you're not telling me anything I don't know. So, in fact, you stop talking in my native tongue, because the priest is doing a respect and speaking to Toranaga directly. And he's like, nope, I want it all translated through Mariko. The priest then lets Toranaga know that Lady Ochiba has turned Ishido is no longer a respect thing about how he's turned him into hate. And Toranaga's like, yeah, she has a deep hate for me, and that's just sort of the way it is. But the priest puts forth an option saying, hey, how about us? You should reach out to Ochiba to create an alliance through her heir. I think that's a way to sort of get to her. Toranaga sort of asks Mariko, like, you were once friends with her. Do you think that's a possibility? Like, that's something that we can even broach, or is she just too far gone? To which Mariko responds, like, you're not her enemy. Fear is her enemy. So if you can do anything to sort of alleviate or acquiesce her fear, you probably can get a leg up. Toranaga is sort of asked in the moment about his just giving up for defeat, and he says he would rather do a peaceful defeat than a high cost victory. He feels like there's too much at stake to continue to fight and to continue to battle, but defeat seems to be the easiest path going forward. He then tells them to call an assembly, because he's aware that some of the folks there at his son's funeral wearing armor. He's like, hey, call an assembly so we can tell these folks, stop wearing their assembly. That's out of disrespect. We are giving up. We're no longer fighting. He wants everybody to know that defeat is what we're doing. He also tells the priest, hey, real quick, I appreciate you trying to change my fate, change my life, and give me an option. That is very respected. And you held up your end of the bargain, so I'm going to hold up my end of the bargain. You do still have a piece of land here in Edo. Should I perish? You have a place to build your church here, like I said you would. However, I do need you to go do me a favor. I need you to go back to Osaka and tell them of what am I doing, how I am, and what is happening here. Basically, he wants him to go back to say, look, Toranaga's in a bad way. He's feeling ill. He's looking for defeat. He's not fighting. So you guys can do whatever you want to. He wants him to go do that message, which signals to the rest of his team that, hey, he's still trying to fight. Like, if he's sending the priest in there to Osaka to get that message, then he is not, there's still a fight to be had. Maybe we can do something with that. We then see the sequence of Buntaro making tea, and it's precious. He does his thing, and then it's apparently it's a good cup of tea. Even Mariko's like, yo, this is some bomb tea. You did well. You did well with this tea. And then he misremembers their relationship. It's kind of like that. Again, I harken this back to a relationship where you and a girl, or you and a boy, whichever side you're on, were in a relationship. one of you was very happy and the other wasn't, and then you break apart, and then you say the person who was the dumped in that situation comes back to say, "Hey, can we talk about what we did?" And that's what happens here. And he looks like a schoolboy, and then she just gives it to him because he's just like, remember fondly when we were first started dating the early days, and um, he messes up by asking her about the early days. It's like, yeah, look, I think you have a very different opinion of what our relationship was, because what he does, he asks, he mentions about their earlier days, and then he's like, "Are you still under the engine spells?" To which she doesn't respond, which is like, "Yeah, I'm still. That's where my heart is." He then asks her to take death with her. He's like, "Look, you and I are one. We're going to die anyway, but let's do this now before we have to give ourselves over." And she's like, "No, I'm good. I'm good. I don't want to take death in our own hands." Um, because he's like, "Let's protest our Lord's surrender." Everybody's against the surrendering. And she's like, "No, I'm good. I'm good on that. It's not death I seek. I just don't want to be under your reach. Like, I would rather live 1,000 years than die with you like this." Ouch. And she just walks up and leaves. Like, "No, I finally said my piece to you. Because I can see you're now at your weakest. We are all about to die anyway. So I can actually give you how I honestly feel. I don't want to be around you. So I'd rather live than to die with you." And he's just sitting there crying. Like, you could, if you could have like an old Cisco song playing behind there, that would be the scene. He was just bawling. At a night in Edo, Blackthorn is searching around for his crew to see if there's any crew still alive, and he runs into one of his own crew members who's in a bad way. He's drunken and trying to attack the Japanese women. Um, to the point where Blackthorn is like, "I don't even want to see him. Like, I'm going to turn around and hopefully he doesn't see me," but he does. And then they have an interaction where he basically blames him for the predicament that he's in. He's like, "You were selfish and you were trying to go after stuff that you knew none of these riches and these things didn't exist. We were doing this selfishly for you, and now we got this for us." And he attacks Blackthorn, and Blackthorn gives him the business back. Probably more. He gives a more aggressive response than I think that was warranted, but I think that's a lot of backed up energy that Blackthorn just sort of had pent up. He lets him have it. Blackthorn then goes to Yabu and Ami with Mariko present as an interpreter and kind of just pledges his allegiance to him. He pretty much uh, wants to defy Toranaga's orders about the surrender and kind of like, "Hey, let's go do our own thing." Yabu refuses, but you can tell he's listening. "I'm hearing what you're saying," but he's like, "Nah, I'm not going to do that." Mariko doesn't quite know what to. She's sort of ashamed and kind of pissed off at Blackthorn that she would even offer to go against what her lord is saying. Blackthorn is like, "It's not treachery. I don't have any allegiance to Toranaga anymore. He's let me go. We've gone our own separate ways. Um, Everybody here knows that I don't belong to Japan, and so I can go kind of go do my own thing. I can go do what I want to do. So I'm sorry that I'm disappointing you, but this is what's best for me. And you should honestly be taking your own life into your own hands as well." But I've come to you, Yabu, today because I know what you are a man who would take your own life into your own hands and not leave it to fate. But Yabu is kind of like, "Nah, not right. He has not yet hit the threshold where Blackthorn is already. Yabu hasn't gotten there, but he will." Yabu says, like, "Nah, I'm not there. I'm loyal to Toranaga." Rico throws a little salt on the wound to Blackthorn and be like, "Hey, yo, once loyalty begins, it cannot end. Otherwise, it's not loyalty." Blackthorn hits back, but loyalty turns senseless very quickly when it ends in suicide. Um, and Mariko's like, "I don't think that's something you want me to interpret. I think that was for me. I see what you did there, Blackthorn. Cool." Omi meets with Kuji and her lady out in sort of like where there's just land to be bought. She's looking at the spot that's going to turn into the willows here in Edo. And Omi just doesn't know what he's fighting for. He doesn't know what the purpose is anymore. He's like, "Are we surrendering? Like, what is the point? What are we fighting for? I feel like we need to be doing more." While they're looking at their land, off to the side, directly next door, the priest comes to look at where his church is going to go up, and then he realizes and he sees that his neighbor is going to be the horse. Yeah. So whatever Toranaga was trying to get the priest to go back to Osaka, I'm not sure that's going to still work out the same way because now the priest is like, well, wait a minute. He's offering them land here too. That's not going to work out. Toranaga meets with his cabinet, if you will, and he says that tomorrow Yabu will take the guns and cannons over to Ishido, to Osaka to give to Ishido, as well as a list of people who will also surrender with me for suicide. Couple sign, some do not, and then it turns quickly. Um, as Buntaro's dad starts questioning Toranaga. But he says he's giving up right now. He said he will commit suicide right now if you don't decide to fight back. Um, Toranaga calls his bluff. He's like, cool, go ahead and do it. To which point Buntaro, he's like, all right, cool. Well, then he calls his son over. Buntaro's like, you're going to be my second. Basically, the person that helped cut off the head after he stabs himself. Buntaro asked to go into death with his father, and his father is kind of like, no, I need you to be here for Toranaga because he is eventually going to get back on the right path. So I need you to be here for him. And then he kills himself in front of everybody. And Toranaga has to watch. And it is a hard scene. It's a very difficult scene. Um, Probably one of the most painful scenes in this season. And then Buntaro has to take his head off. And the head rolls off and it comes right over to Toranaga. What is interesting about this is how difficult that scene is. It's even more difficult when you realize that Toranaga put this into play. Like this had to be a part of the plan, and Buntaro's father knew that he had to do this to sort of be that sacrifice to get the pieces moving to where they had to go to. Because in this the next scene, Toranaga asked Mariko, "Hey, did Yabu meet with Blackthorn?" And she's like, "Yeah, but Yabu turned it down." He was like, "Well, that should change now. After what occurred today, I think Yabu will take him up on his offer." To which point Mariko was like, "Wait, what? Were you in on this?" Like his whole plan was, I know who both of those men are. I know both Yabu and Blackthorn's character. And I know that they are not going to just sit by idly and take this by. But I can't give on that I am aware of this. So I am pushing them towards this. And Buntaro's dad was sort of aware that he had to be that little catalyst to the flame to get this ball rolling. And so he put his life on the line for that. And I will always be in debt to him. But that was the plan. It says that Buntaro's dad, Hiromatsu, knew his duty well, and that he did things the way that he was supposed to. Everything had to believe that Toranaga's defeat is at hand. They need to feel that they have the defeat completely, so they sort of lower their defenses and lower their shield a little bit, and are at a bit of a calm. Meanwhile, I can send Yabu and Blackthorn around the other side, and they will attack the way that they can. So then he asks, like, now, Mariko, now that that's all set, are you ready to go do your part? And she kind of looks up, like, yeah. So then she is asked to go be on the boat. Once Yabu and Ami do hook up, they're ready to go attack. They're going to go do that. Mariko is asked on Toranaga's behalf to go do it. And that's when Yabu and Blackthorn realize, this is all a part of it. Got it. And the final sequence is we see Toranaga going to his son's grave and saying, because of the mourning period, you earned me some time. I will not waste it. So we had consistently seen throughout all of this that Toranaga had always been playing chess. And it seemed like in this, he had just basically given up defeat, which he was putting on this air of defeat so that he could, even to his own men, he cannot let his own men know that he was fighting back because somebody in there would probably get the word back, especially Yabu would get the word back to saying they're going to fight back. But if we're sending everybody else word out from the priest and all these other people, although that word might change a little bit because of the placement of his church, we can see that, hey, defeat is on the horizon for them. they won't be aware or witnessing the attack coming. So it's a really smart and well done episode to show the weakness of Toranaga as he plays sort of possum while he still is building up things around to sort of continue to attack. Um, I think my favorite part in this again was the Buntaro Mariko, like the childlike innocence that he had as being this young boy trying to ask this girl out, and she's like, "Nah, I want no parts of you." And then also sort of seeing to what lengths Hiramatsu would go to give everybody that push to get things rolling the way that they need to for Toranaga in this war. What did you guys think about this 8th episode of Shogun called The Abyss of Life? Go ahead and leave your thoughts and comments in the comments below. If you haven't already, you can follow us on Twitter at HollywoodADI. You can hit us up on email at HollywoodAlreadydidit@gmail.com. We also have a podcast by the same name. It's on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, any other place podcasts. We're there. Like always, I got my ticket. You got yours.